Hello, brave visitor, and welcome to the exhibition of the uncanny. But beware, this is going to be one chilling experience for you. Even Sabrina the Witch couldn't handle these photos. Now, if you've got what it takes to jump into the tunnel of oddities, let's begin. The first photo will take you back to 1900s Belfast. It shows 15 females who were workers at a linen mill. If you calculate how many hands 15 people have, it makes 30, right? But take a good look at the photo, and you'll see there's an extra hand that doesn't belong to any of the ladies there. All the women are arranged in rows with their arms crossed over their chests and hands tucked underneath their arms. There is only one exception to that, and it's the lady in the second row with one hand on her hip and the other down by her side. That's one little rebel you got there. But the mysterious claw-like hand is neither hers nor does it belong to someone close to her. It's actually resting on the shoulder of a girl on the other side of the same row. And there's no one else who the hand could belong to. Even though it's a century old, the photograph first appeared on the internet on April 29, 2016. It was sent to one website by a woman named Linda, who identified the girl with the hand on her shoulder as her grandmother, Ellen Donnelly. But she never commented on who that hand might belong to. What's even weirder is that there's no evidence whatsoever that suggests that the photo was digitally altered. So where did this lonely hand come from? Photoshop didn't exist back then. But this doesn't mean photographers didn't have the necessary skills to edit their photos. Although it was not possible to add an extra hand to the photo, it was surely possible to remove any unwanted objects or people by simply cutting them out with scissors. Photographers would then draw what they wanted to be in the picture in pencil or charcoal. They could also combine multiple negatives to create a single image. There's one more answer to where the hand could have come from. Even though instantaneous photography had already existed in the 1900s, some photographers still use the long exposure technique to capture the moment. So it is possible that while the photo was being taken, the lady in the back initially placed her hands on Ellen and then decided to cross her arms, which makes this terrifying photo the result of long camera exposure. So you can ease your mind that it was not Thing, the hand that lived with the Addams family, that photobombed this picture. Now in our second photo, you'll see a young lady holding a glowing apparition between her hands. It might also make it easy for you to believe that magic is real. But sorry to disappoint you, because that is not the Expelliarmus spell she's doing. The woman in the photo is French-born Martha Baron, who later changed her name to Eva Carrera. She lived between 1886 and 1943. She was a fraudulent medium. She claimed to have psychic abilities that allowed her to communicate with people who had passed over to the other side and make their spirits materialize during her seances. At the time, such lying mediums would follow a standard procedure during their seances. They would enter a closet installed in the room to pretend to concentrate. Then they could use their powers at full capacity to generate ectoplasm. When not used in the context of cell biology, ectoplasm is a term referring to an imaginary substance that would come out of the body of the medium. It then might take the shape of a face, a hand, or even the entire body of the person who's being called back to life. Eva Carrera was one of those dishonest mediums who would use chewed paper and cut out faces from magazines and newspapers to make fake ectoplasm. This photo of hers, taken in 1912 by German parapsychological researcher Albert von Schrenck-Nozick, shows her in action during one of such deceptive seances. But knowing the full story doesn't change the fact that this photo can make your hair stand on end. But what's even more unbelievable than the photo itself is the fact that she was able to convince big names like Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the author of the Sherlock Holmes mystery series, that she was the real thing. But you'll be happy to know that she couldn't trick illusionist and escape artist Harry Houdini, who, unlike Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, thought her performances were nothing more than a magician's tricks. Now, these owls in the third photo are not Hogwarts owls, and they are not here to bring you your acceptance letter. This photo was taken in the 1920s outside the Manchester Grammar School, which was founded all the way back in 1515 by a man named Hugh Oldham. And he is the reason why these people are wearing weird owl costumes as they're marching. Hugh Oldham was born in Manchester. He wasn't a serious scholar, despite attending both Oxford and Cambridge universities. Well, the tuition was cheaper then. However, he was in royal service, and thanks to his administrative skills, he was favored with important titles. That is what actually helped him reach high positions and become a powerful and influential figure. And through his new duties, he was able to achieve great wealth, which he later used to fund the school. The motto of Oldham's school, which is written on its coat of arms, is the Latin phrase "Sapere aude," which loosely translates to "Dare to be wise." To this day, the school still has that same motto, but the choice of the owl doesn't symbolize wisdom as you might think. The owl on the Manchester Grammar School's badge is carrying a banner with the word "dome" on it. If you read it as one would read emojis, you would arrive at owldom, which is actually a reference to Hugh Oldham. When you look at the crest of the town of Oldham, you'll see it's very similar to that of the school. This choice was made to reflect the pronunciation of Oldham in the local accent, which is owldom. Accordingly, paying respects to their founding father is why both the school's and the town's mascot is the owl. So rest assured that nothing sinister and spooky is going on in this photo. Now, how about something sweet after all that eerie stuff? The fourth photo depicts an innocent child whose eyes are screaming, "Help me!" But don't worry, the boogeyman is not the one holding him. The thing he seems to be sitting on is actually his mother. This is called hidden mother photography, and it was actually very common in the Victorian era. Back in the 1840s, the only way people could have their photos taken was with a daguerreotype camera, which was the first photographic camera developed for commercial use. These cameras had exposure times from tens of seconds to several minutes. So one had to stay perfectly still during all that time to get a clear picture. But as you can imagine, it's not easy for a child, let alone me, to stay motionless for such a long period of time. And you can't say strike a pose to a baby either. So this is the reason why the hidden mother technique was born. Children would be photographed with their mothers present, but mommy would also have to be hidden within the frame. To achieve that, they would often stand behind curtains, under cloaks or blankets, or act as chairs. Sometimes photographers would also remove parts of photographs where moms were visible. Wow, the hardships mothers have to go through for their children. Boy, that hasn't changed. Some of the photos turned out quite well, but some of them ended up looking nightmarish. This practice continued to be used up until the 1920s. But as cameras became faster, there was no need for moms to hide anywhere. At least until photobombing became a thing. Welcome back. Let's continue our search for intelligent life on planet Earth. Did you know there was a headless photography trend in the 19th century Britain? The first camera was invented in 1816. The possibilities were endless with this new invention, so photographers were experimenting. Take a look at these Victorian headless portraits. People are holding their heads on platters or directly in their hands. In some variations, they also hold the equipment that was supposedly used to separate the head from the body. You can consider this as the early days of Photoshop. Photographers took numerous photos of the same subject and combined the negatives. This way, they created an illusion that the head and the body were apart from each other. Yet another way to get ahead in life. The Shiger idol is the oldest wooden sculpture in the world. It's approximately 12,000 years old. For comparison, it's twice as old as the pyramids. Experts say that the Shiger idol is covered in encrypted code, which is sort of a message from a lost civilization. Apparently, people passed on knowledge with the help of the statue. The carvings may be about their belief system. No one has been able to crack the code yet, even after years of attempts. The Joanina Library in central Portugal is not only a place with loads of books, but also a home for a colony of bats. Bats come there to fill their bellies with gnats, flies, and other pests. After the feast, they swoop out of the library windows and fly across the town in search of some water. The library has many manuscript books, so this is a win-win situation. Bats eat insects, and insects don't eat books. It's a mystery how the creatures first entered the building, yet experts do know that they've been there since at least the 19th century. You can see the library's flying residents yourself if you come to the doors of the building at night, or you can pay a visit to the library on a rainy day. Ooh, wanna go see the library? In December 2019, a man robbed a bank 2 days before the holiday. Interestingly, he threw all the money into the air in the street. Witnesses said that after doing it, he went to a nearby Starbucks where he waited to be arrested. And the money? Well, passers-by brought it back to the bank. Yes, every single banknote. Not even a dollar ended up in someone's pockets. In the town of Churchill in Manitoba, Canada, locals keep their car doors unlocked. But it's not an invitation for thieves. It's done for protection against potential polar bear attacks. Imagine a resident facing a polar bear in the street. Luckily, there's another person's car nearby, so they can easily hide inside that vehicle. Polar bears look innocent and even cute, but they're wild, unpredictable animals with claws and teeth. The town has the largest number of polar bears in the world. I mean, it's literally the polar bear capital of the world. Seems like locals have gotten used to coexisting with bears. They're part of the community. So, to avoid conflicts between the two species of mammals, the town authorities have developed some strategies to eliminate the risks. For instance, an open-air dump was closed so that the polar bears wouldn't find food if they visited, and the bears wouldn't be down in the dumps. Ever wondered where apples originated from? It might be strange to think about it. Apples seem like such a common fruit. But no, it was originally cultivated in one specific region of the world. The birthplace of the modern apple is the Tian Shan Mountains of Kazakhstan. Scientists believe apple seeds were first transported out of Kazakhstan by birds and bears. By the time people began to grow and trade apples, the fruit had already taken root in Syria. The Romans discovered it there and spread apples further around the world. One thing led to another, and finally, the Silk Road trade network brought the apple from Kazakhstan to Europe and other parts of the world, like North America. It may not come as a surprise, but the name of one of the biggest cities of Kazakhstan, Almaty, means full of apples. Alma-Ata is a mythological person. Legend has it that he planted the first apple tree in the world. Imagine going on a hike with your friend, but getting lost on the way. If your friend says, "Wait a minute, I think we've been here before," they're probably right. People tend to walk in circles when they're lost unless there's some kind of external reference point. Several blindfolded people took part in an experiment that was studying this phenomenon. Scientists discovered that the reason people walked in circles was hidden in the brain. When people are blindfolded, the brain can only figure out the way based on the input coming from the sense of balance and movement sensors in the muscles and joints. This limited information is not enough to find the way. Now, think about all those horror movies. If the main characters didn't start wandering in circles after getting lost, there would be no plot. Robert Kearns invented intermittent windshield wipers. He patented his design in 1967. These wipers pause between swipes in very light rain or mist. The invention allows the driver to set the interval at which the wipers sweep the window. Anyway, Kearns started to have meetings with car makers and speak about his invention. Yet he didn't sign a contract with any of them. Later on, car manufacturers began inventing intermittent wipers too. You've probably already figured out where this is going. Kearns sued Ford in 1978 and Chrysler in 1982, accusing them of patent infringement. In 1990, a jury decided that Ford had indeed violated Kearns' patent, but the court added that this hadn't been a deliberate effort. The two sides continued to argue about the product's uniqueness. But eventually, Ford paid Kearns $10.2 million and settled the case. As for Chrysler, this company was ordered to pay Kearns $30 million. Wow, that's a lot of bucks to wipe. Sylvan Goldman had a grocery chain in Oklahoma. He tried to make it profitable, so he studied his customers' behavior. Sometime later, he began to notice something that would ultimately change the way people shopped even today. Shoppers generally went to cash points, where their hand-carried baskets became heavy. After making this observation, Goldman created an early-day version of the shopping cart in 1936. With heavy weight out of the equation, he thought customers would buy more stuff, or at least they would shop longer and look around more. Nope, not yet. People stuck with handheld baskets. They preferred the known to the unusual thingy. Goldman didn't give up. This time, he hired decoy shoppers. These customers were wandering around the stores with the new carts, providing a visual demonstration of what a shopping cart was capable of. He also placed a worker at the front door to greet customers and offer them carts when they entered. Ah, humans, it worked! People began using wheeled baskets as if they had been around for years. Shopping carts were quickly adopted by other chains too. Soon they became a regular part of the shopping experience. Goldman left a fortune worth more than $400 million. Do you know octopuses have blue blood? This color is caused by hemocyanin, which carries blood around the octopus's body. Human blood contains iron, but in octopuses, it's copper instead of iron. Copper-based hemocyanin is more efficient at transporting oxygen in cold environments in places where the oxygen level is low. But it's only blue when the animal is alive. When the blood becomes deoxygenated, it loses its blue color. Now, one species of jellyfish is immortal. Really? A fully grown creature is only about a quarter-inch long, or, to put it in perspective, it's smaller than the nail on your pinky. But this tiny creature is a survivor. It has the skill to transform back into a polyp when it faces physical damage or starvation. They practically get reborn. Scientists first observed this fascinating phenomenon in the 1990s. Since then, the species has been called the immortal jellyfish. So, two jellyfish are in a bar. One says to the other, "Hey, what took you so long?" The other one says, "Look, I'm immortal, so sue me. Plus, I had to get this polyp removed." Ba-dum-dum. Now, have you ever seen cricket balls that are 3 billion years old? Klerksdorp spheres were found in deposits of the mineral pyrophyllite in South Africa and rock the science world. They do look like tiny ancient cricket balls with seams-like lines around the middle. Back in the 1980s, some folks claimed these spheres had been made by an advanced pre-flood civilization we know nothing about. One museum curator shared stories about how they rotated on their own in a display case. There was also a TV show that invited a psychic who declared the spheres were pieces of an ancient spaceship. But according to geologists, these spheres are actually pretty common concretions or spherical objects formed by different minerals than the surrounding rock. The seam-like lines are just imprints from the host rock's layers building up over time. The Klerksdorp spheres come in different shapes, from noticeably flattened spheres to distinct discs. As for that episode when one of these spheres spun on its own, the curator of the Klerksdorp Museum cleared that up too. He said that when he put one sphere on its glass shelf when a journalist came to visit, the sphere naturally rotated a bit because it's round. The area where the museum is located often experiences earth tremors from gold mining activities nearby. The oldest known human-like footprints could be 6 million years old. They were found on the Greek island of Crete in 2002. If the number is correct, it would mean that early human ancestors may have migrated between Europe and Africa much earlier than we previously thought. This doesn't mean Africa is not the cradle of humankind, though. It could just prove that early human ancestors moved back and forth between continents. Some researchers believe the footprints were left by a bipedal creature possibly related to an early human ancestor nicknamed El Greco. According to scientists who studied them, the footprints have a very human-like shape, with 5 toes and a parallel big toe. Some scientists are skeptical about it and suggest the prints might be from a late European ape. The new study analyzed fossilized marine microorganisms found in the sedimentary rocks to determine the footprint's age and prove it's actually 6 million years. The next amazing find that keeps scientists entertained is the Dorchester pot. It's a beautifully crafted metal vessel with some fancy geometric designs embossed in shiny silver. The pot was discovered in, who could have thought, Dorchester in 1852 under quite unusual circumstances. During a powerful blast, the pot broke into 2 pieces. Scientists believe it was originally embedded within a rock or boulder known as pudding stone. The rock from which the Dorchester pot emerged is dated to be around 500 million years old, so it could mean the pot itself is also that old. The current and less exciting theory suggests that the Dorchester pot is a Victorian-era candlestick holder. Such things were really trending back then, so it's not a surprise to find such fancy household item from that time. The Dorchester pot falls into the category of ooparts, or out-of-place artifacts. Those are objects that seem too advanced for the time period they're supposedly from. If we accept that the pot is 500 million years old, then whoever made it was way ahead of their times in terms of crafts and tech. One extra mystery is that the pot has an engraving of a plant that most likely disappeared from Earth over 100,000 years ago. Sounds like good proof the pot is really extra old. Now, it looks like the oldest map in Europe is a stone from 4,000 years ago. This Bronze Age slab was found in France in the year 1900 at an ancient burial ground. The carvings on the slab show in 3 dimensions the River Odey network with a fantastic accuracy of around 80% over an 18-mile stretch. There are other stone-carved maps around the world, but this one is unique because it shows a specific area to scale. Looks like the slab's carvings don't just map rivers and hills, but also settlements, barrow sites, and field systems. Archaeologists say the slab wasn't used for navigation, but rather to symbolize power. The detailed markings on the slab might have served to illustrate the domain of a local ruler, possibly a prince or king, to show their control over the territory. When the ruler lost power, the slab was likely repurposed as part of a burial vault. The unique artifact was stored in the cellar of a museum. For decades, no one even noticed until several scholars read older reports about the slab and decided to check it out. They conducted a detailed analysis using 3D techniques. Their research proved that the creators of the slab had not only etched lines into the rock, but also modified its surface to reflect the topography of the landscape with high accuracy. The Salzburg cube, also known as the Wolf's Egg iron, was discovered in the late 19th century in Austria. Now, don't let the name mislead you. It doesn't look like a cube at all. It's more like a rounded object with 2 flat sides. Down the middle, there's a groove, and the surface is covered with pits and craters. This unique appearance is the reason why many people think it might be something out of this world. Workers accidentally found this artifact when they blew apart a piece of coal. The coal seam it came from is thought to be over 60 million years old. The Salzburg cube moved between museums, mysteriously vanished in the early 20th century, and then showed up again. A professor from Bonn University suggested it might be from a meteor, but they found no evidence of elements that you'd normally see in meteorites, like cobalt or nickel. Then researchers thought it must be a human-made object, possibly a Victorian-era candlestick holder. No one knows the true story of the cube or its current location. Yep, it disappeared again. Have you heard about the Meister print? It's a fossilized sandal print discovered in 1968, and it has sparked a lot of intrigue. There's a trilobite inside the print, which supposedly went extinct around 500 million years before humans even existed. But many historians think this age is an exaggeration. When Meister found the fossil, it was authenticated. But the scientist who did it didn't confirm it was a human sandal print. He only agreed there was a trilobite there. When another scientist visited the site, he found a 6-inch impression he believed was from a child's moccasin. But the footwear seemed to be new. So, could it be evidence of time travel? Proof that humans existed millions of years earlier than we thought? Or a sign that someone else visited early Earth? Or is it just a rock formation that looks like a sandal print? We still don't have the answers. Back in June 1936, a couple was walking along Red Creek in London, Texas. London, Texas? Yeah, when they stumbled upon something unusual. It was a piece of wood sticking out of what seemed to be an ancient rock formation. About 10 years later, their curious son decided to crack open the rock to see what was inside. And he saw a hammer, which looked surprisingly modern. Then, one unique finds enthusiast decided that the rock encasing the hammer was from the Cretaceous period. This would mean that someone dropped a 19th century hammer while dinosaurs like Triceratops were still roaming the earth. So, if this hammer was truly from the Cretaceous period, then the whole evolutionary theory would be wrong. And if the hammer was modern, it would mean the Cretaceous rock formation it came from was much younger than we thought. But the real answer was much simpler. The hammer was indeed modern, and geological processes had encased it in rock. Minerals can harden around an object in a relatively short time. So the hammer was probably dropped by a miner a century or so ago, and the rock formed around it afterwards. And no, it wasn't a Victorian-era candlestick holder either.
Have you heard of Göbekli Tepe? It's an ancient site in Turkey that literally made historians rewrite history books. Over 11,000 years ago, a group of prehistoric humans crafted an enigmatic masterpiece that's even older than Stonehenge. Before its discovery, archaeologists believed that people didn't know about iron and weren't good at making pottery. They were sure that settled life only emerged with the need for agriculture. But Göbekli Tepe changed this belief. The place has revealed that it was the temple that paved the way for a settled life, not agriculture. Until this discovery, researchers believed that farming was the catalyst for sedentary living. Meet Professor Schmidt, the guy whose findings changed this theory. He managed to prove that hunter-gatherer communities laid the very foundations of this way of life. Back in the 1960s, other archaeologists visited the area, but they totally missed the mark. While surveying the region, they stumbled upon a hill with scattered limestone slabs and concluded it was just an old burial ground from medieval times. Little did they know that there was so much more to uncover. In 1994, Schmidt embarked on his own survey of prehistoric sites in the area. Surprise! He instantly realized he had discovered something truly extraordinary. Unlike the nearby flat and barren plateaus, Göbekli Tepe had a gently rounded top, rising 50 feet above the surrounding landscape. Funny enough, the translation of this place's name is Potbelly Hill. Schmidt was sure only humans could have made something like this. Those broken limestone pieces that were mistaken for gravestones turned out to be way more exciting. It was like stumbling upon a hidden treasure. The pieces took on a whole new meaning, and Schmidt with his team was about to dive into the secrets waiting beneath the surface. To their surprise, they found no traces of a settlement. No hearths for cooking, no houses, and none of those adorable clay figurines commonly found in nearby sites of similar age. However, they uncovered that those ancient people used tools like stone hammers. So, Schmidt and his team put their heads together and took a wild guess at the age of Göbekli Tepe's stone structures. Their estimation got backed up by some limited carbon dating done right at the site. The ancient vibes of this place were finally starting to make sense. It was like a puzzle slowly coming together. You may think that back then, people didn't have special tools to create something as cool as Göbekli Tepe. Not true. Turns out, these prehistoric folks used flint tools instead of fancy metal chisels. They were also skilled at chipping away softer limestone and crafting pillars right on the spot. Afterward, they carried the pillars a short distance to the summit and placed them upright. Once the stone rings were complete, they covered them with layers of dirt. Over time, they added new rings, and voila! You've got a cool hill to impress people in the future. During their first year of excavation, the team went through 15,000 pieces of animal bones from wild creatures. These people didn't have pet animals or grow their own food. They hunted wild animals for their meals. But things were about to change because the place had everything they needed to start farming. Scientists say they had wild sheep and wild grains that could be domesticated. And guess what? Just 20 miles away, geneticists found evidence of the world's oldest domesticated strains of wheat at a prehistoric village. These amazing findings have completely changed how we view civilization. In the past, experts believed that people needed to learn how to farm and settle in one place before they could build temples and develop complex societies. But guess what? Schmidt's research flips that idea on its head. He claims that the incredible effort put into constructing these astonishing structures actually set the stage for the development of advanced societies. It means that societal and cultural changes happened before agriculture. Schmidt has this fascinating hypothesis about Göbekli Tepe. He thinks it could have been a special burial site where people left their loved ones. And here's the twist. The burial site was adorned with fancy statues and symbols representing deities from the spiritual realm. The idea that Göbekli Tepe could have served as a sacred place adds another layer of complexity to the whole story. While the site's true purpose may remain elusive, Schmidt's insights invite us to consider the profound interplay between life and the afterlife, and the deep reverence ancient hunter-gatherer societies may have had for their departed ancestors. Now let's talk about the stars of the show, the mesmerizing T-shaped columns that dominate Göbekli Tepe. These mysterious structures range from 10 to 20 feet tall and most likely represent stylized human figures. But one figure stands out from the rest, the three-dimensional lion relief. This depiction really fires up our imagination. Why? Because it hints at the possibility that lions roamed Anatolia during the Neolithic period. These standing stones are arranged in circles and placed in rectangular pits. Each circle has a similar setup. Two big T-shaped pillars in the center, surrounded by slightly smaller ones facing inward. Talk about a stylish arrangement. These towering pillars reach a whopping 16 feet and weigh between 7 and 10 tons. Some pillars are plain and simple, while others are like works of art with intricate carvings. Foxes, scorpions, and vultures come to life, crawling and twisting on the pillars' sides. But it's not just animals depicted on these stones. Some pillars have abstract shapes representing humans, and even small carvings of clothing items. Some of them even have belts. Now, there's one pillar that stands out from the rest like a rock star. This super old stone pillar suggests that a comet crashed into Earth. It happened during a chilly period that lasted about 1,000 years. Previous studies examining Greenland ice cores hinted at this comet theory, but now the carvings at Göbekli Tepe prove it right. The carvings on the pillars are like a historical comic strip. They even show a headless human figure. Researchers fed the images into a computer and discovered their connections to constellations, indicating that this temple might have been an ancient observatory. It's like our ancestors were trying to document this cataclysmic event in their own unique way. Archaeologists have been excavating and researching Göbekli Tepe since the mid-1990s, peeling back layers of history and providing us with a deeper understanding of the intricate relationship between various elements. They have no plans to stop the whole process for another 150 years. Who knows what else they'll find? You see, Göbekli Tepe has been labeled purely as a ritual site with no signs of domestic activities. We were led to believe that the absence of water meant it couldn't support semi-sedentary communities. But scientists believe it's time to shake things up and approach Göbekli Tepe with fresh eyes. It's time to question what we believed before and use new evidence and different ways of thinking. Like, there might have been a group of people living in the area who didn't stay in one place all the time. They moved around a bit but still had their own civilization, living in the area semi-sedentarily. Göbekli Tepe is not just home to a single temple. but an astounding collection of over 20 ancient structures. As archaeologists delve into the depths of this wonder, they are unraveling its unique layout, featuring two prominent focal points at the heart of each establishment, complemented by smaller structures and dividing walls. What's even crazier is that in this area, there are over 200 obelisks, which are narrow tapering monuments.
You know the old sayings. To appreciate life just a tad bit more, you sometimes need to walk a mile in a stranger's shoes. But the people surrounding you have roughly the same likes and struggles, right? What if you could experience human life as it was thousands of years ago, or even a couple hundred years? Why not? Trust me, you'll be amazed at the differences. And the similarities for that matter. Let's start with a time before smartphones, before fast food chains, and before even electricity was a thing. I'm talking about the Stone Age. During these times, our early ancestors were all about living in caves, simple huts, or teepees. They didn't do much apart from hunting and gathering for their food. If you'd lived back then, you might have used basic stone and bone tools. You would have needed those things to hunt all sorts of wild animals, from birds to woolly mammoths. Hey, you'd even cook your meals using controlled fire. Yeah, steaks go way back. But people back then weren't all muscle and no brains. These ancient humans were also the first to leave behind art. They used all sorts of funky materials like minerals and charcoal mixed into water, or tree saps to make their engravings. They even carved little figurines from stones, clay, or bones. Now, during those days, humankind also experienced the last ice age, which was a real bummer for a lot of the big mammals that our ancestors used to hunt. Obviously, things started to change. Humans began using smaller, more polished stone tools like spears and arrows. They even started to live near rivers and other bodies of water in nomadic camps. Think glamping, but without the fancy photo filters we use today. Later on, ancient humans switched from hunting and gathering to agriculture and food production. They started domesticating animals and cultivating cereal grains. They used all sorts of fancy new tools like polished hand axes and even began to settle down in the plains. Don't even get me started on the advancements they made in home construction and art. They were weaving, sewing, and making pottery like it was nobody's business. Our next stop in history, ancient Greece. Want to hear about what your home might have looked like back then? Turns out, ancient Greek houses were built around a courtyard or garden. It doesn't sound much different than what we're used to these days, right? But the walls were made of wood and mud bricks. No fancy concrete or steel for them. As for the windows, they were small and without glass. But hey, they had wooden shutters to keep out the hot sun. You probably wouldn't have had much furniture inside, but if you were lucky enough to be on the wealthy side, you might have decorated your walls and floors with colorful tiles and paintings. Unfortunately, when nature called, many homes didn't have a bathroom, so people had to rely on small vessels or even wash in streams they had nearby. I mean, imagine how awkward that must have been. Only the wealthy had the luxury of taking baths at home. At night, ancient Greeks slept on beds stuffed with wool, feathers, or even dry grass. And with no electricity, the only lights came from flickering oil lamps and candles. Wanna talk fashion? Turns out many people walked around barefoot. Some wore leather sandals, or for horse riding, high boots. When it got hot, some rocked wide-brimmed hats to shade their faces from the sun. One thing they definitely did right was jewelry. They sported everything from bracelets to earrings and even necklaces. Now, when it came to eating, men and women usually ate separately, and the rich always ate at home. The less privileged folks would eat in public. But get this, everyone ate with their fingers, so food was cut up in the kitchen first. Fancy being a knight in the Middle Ages next? Back in the day, those fancy pants knights were all about that manor life. But let me tell you, they didn't even own the land proper. Nope, they were granted rights to the income from a manor or other lands by an overlord. And as time went on, these lands were passed down from generation to generation, like a family heirloom. Oh, and forget about dividing that land up between all the heirs. Most lands went straight to the eldest son. Sorry, other siblings. And don't even get me started on the hierarchy. Society was extremely divided back then. Heads of state and the highest-ranking nobility were on top, controlling large pieces of land. Lesser nobles had authority over smaller areas of land and fewer people, and at the bottom of the noble club list were the other knights, who didn't even own land and had to serve other nobles. Not fun, right? However, your daily life might not have been that bad. You might have enjoyed some leisure activities too, like playing games. Cue the chess matches and listening to music of the troubadours. These musicians were incredible songwriters, skilled poets, as well as singers and instrumentalists. Let's proceed with the Renaissance. It was a time of change, excitement, and luxury. People were finally able to enjoy some of the finer things in life, like better clothes and nicer tasting foods. And boy oh boy did they love the arts. The streets were also filled with craftsmen, artisans, and merchants who had some money to spend. But don't get me wrong, life wasn't all sunshine and rainbows for everyone. The farmers and peasants still had to work hard all day long. Their homes were little more than one-room huts, while the wealthy merchants got to live in giant mansions. Sure, those mansions might have been dark and cold and pretty smelly, but at least they had space. Now, let's get to the good stuff. Fashion. Clothing was a big deal during the Renaissance. The rich would dress up in all sorts of fancy clothing, from tight coats for men to long dresses for women. Entertainment was all the rage during the Renaissance. If you lived back then, you would surely have loved going to festivals, sporting events, and playing games like chess, checkers, and backgammon. But the biggest event of all was Carnival. You would dress up in crazy costumes and had big parties. And of course, there was shopping. You would head to the marketplace in town where the local merchants and craftsmen would sell their goods. Money wasn't as regulated as it is today, and each city had its own currency with constantly changing values. Now, if you were lucky enough to go to school during the Renaissance, you were probably wealthy. It was the nobles that mostly learned about grammar and arithmetic, but some studied philosophy, Latin, and public speaking too. There's probably no other time in history more impactful on human life than the Industrial Revolution. What did it really mean, though? Well, picture this. Before this time period, people used to make things with their hands, in their own homes or small workshops. But then, someone had a brilliant idea to build big factories and use machines powered by engines to make products in large quantities. The first country to try this new way of doing things was England. But soon, the whole world caught on. The Industrial Revolution started in the cloth industry, where making fabric used to be a slow process. But with inventions like the flying shuttle, things got a lot easier. With all these new machines and factories, people needed a way to get raw materials in and finished products out. That's where transportation came in. The steamboat appeared in 1807. Then, someone came up with the brilliant idea to put a steam engine on top of wheels. And then on top of rails. Ta-da! The railroad was born in 1825. As you can imagine, all these things had a big impact on where people lived and how they worked. You might have needed to leave the countryside and move into bigger towns and cities to find work. But the cities were often dirty and crowded. And while the machines made work easier in some ways, factory work created a lot of problems for the workers. You might not have earned much, and the work was often dangerous.
So this huge volcano, everyone thought to be extinct, woke up and spat out a black ash cloud 50 miles high. That's about 9 times as tall as Mount Everest. Located in what is now Indonesia, the powerful Krakatoa had caused huge tsunamis that rocked over ships as far away as South Africa. It also changed the temperatures around the world for several years. The volcanic island of Krakatoa in the Sunda Strait was likely born thanks to another major eruption several centuries ago. It hadn't erupted for at least 200 years before 1883. So the first tremors and blasts in May of that year came as a total shock to people living nearby. Then ships sailing through the busy water passage started reporting clouds of ash above the volcano. It went quiet again for a while, but they could still see ash above it. The eruption culminated at the end of August. It was so powerful that it shattered the island into fragments. Witnesses heard the sound produced by it in Australia, around 3,000 miles away. They described the noise as the roar of heavy cannons. Some say it was the loudest sound ever heard. During the next 5 days, the pressure wave from the eruption traveled around the globe 3.5 times and was seen on barographs on different continents. Hot avalanches of ash spread down the volcano as far as 25 miles away at crazy speeds. They ruined the surrounding islands and took 36,000 lives. Tens of thousands more drowned in tsunamis that happened after the volcano had collapsed into the caldera. Over 100 coastal villages on Java and Sumatra were completely wiped out. All this made the waking up of Krakatoa one of the most devastating in the entire recorded history. The Earth's crust is like a giant puzzle, made up of massive pieces known as tectonic plates. These plates are constantly sliding against each other over the mantle, which is the molten layer beneath. Indonesia is right in the middle of the so-called subduction zone. Here, the Indo-Australian plate collides with part of the Asian plate as it moves northward. As the oceanic plate dives down, it gets heated up, and you've got the perfect recipe for a volcanic hotspot. Krakatoa had 3 peaks, each serving as an exit door for a massive magma chamber beneath it. During a previous eruption, debris blocked one of these exits, and the pressure built up beneath. When Krakatoa finally blew its top, the blast split the magma chamber wide open. The eruption led to a so-called volcanic winter. Krakatoa had sent 6 cubic miles of rock, ash, and debris into the atmosphere. They created a thick veil that surrounded the Earth. The particles scattered sunlight, and the troposphere below cooled down. The effect stayed strong for several years. The Northern Hemisphere experienced colder than average temperatures, and in some regions, summer temperatures didn't rise to typical levels. Southern California received a record amount of rainfall in the months following the eruption. The sky became darker in different parts of the world for years afterwards. The sunsets, for many months, turned into a spectacular show of red and orange. One astronomer supposed it was the source of the inspiration for The Scream by Edvard Munch. The painting shows exactly what the sky over Norway looked like after the eruption. It also produced a rare type of halo called Bishop's Ring and a volcanic purple light at night. For several years after Krakatoa had blown up, the moon looked blue and sometimes green. That's because some ash clouds were full of particles large enough to scatter red light, only letting other colors pass. Someone even witnessed lavender sun and night-shining clouds. Krakatoa became the first scientifically well-recorded and studied eruption of a volcano. Between the moments the first clouds of ash were seen by a ship passing by and the disastrous eruption, scientists managed to organize geological expeditions. They studied the volcano and gathered samples of volcanic rocks. It became useful for understanding volcanic activity. Krakatoa was sleeping tight until the 1920s, when some locals noticed a column of steam and debris spewing from the collapsed caldera. Within weeks, the rim of a new cone sprang up above sea level. After a year, it was a small island named Child of Krakatoa. It continues to erupt, but fortunately without serious consequences so far. In April of 1815, Mount Tambora unleashed a massive eruption, wreaking havoc on the Indonesian island of Sumbawa. It destroyed homes and claimed 10,000 lives. Another 80,000 perished because of diseases that spread in the aftermath. The following went in history as the year without a summer. Cold, wet conditions wrapped Europe and North America in an unexpected chill. It became the coldest in at least 250 years. In the summer of that year, the temperatures dropped the most. Crops didn't grow, livestock didn't survive, and famine took over Western Europe and North America. New England had snow and terrible frost in the summer months. Food prices went up. Oats for horses became a luxury. Some people say it even inspired the invention of the bicycle in 1817. Scientists used early data and climate models to see if it was all because of the Tambora eruption. They compared the data to similar years. They showed that precipitation was around the same, but the temperatures were much warmer. When they introduced the volcano into the scenario, they got the exact data for the year without summer. They say that a powerful volcanic eruption like that one increases the likelihood of extreme cold by up to 100 times. The explosion of the Toba supervolcano on the island of Sumatra around 74,000 years ago became the Earth's largest volcanic eruption in 28 million years. Parts of Indonesia, India, and a slice of the Indian Ocean got a cozy blanket made up of 6 inches of volcanic debris. It spat out a volume of rock comparable to almost 3 million Empire State Buildings. The crater it had left behind is still seen from space. All the ash and volcanic gases that sprang into the atmosphere because of the eruption partially blocked the sunlight. A severe volcanic winter began and lasted for 6 to 10 years. Some anthropologists see a connection between the Toba eruption and how limited modern humans are when it comes to genetic variety. Around 74,000 years ago, exactly when the Toba erupted, there was a population nosedive. That's why all modern humans trace their roots back to a tiny group of survivors. The Toba catastrophe theory proposes that most early humans in Europe and Asia didn't make it through the post-eruption climate chaos. Instead, a lucky, genetically limited bunch found their safe haven in Africa. But archaeological and paleoclimate records disagree with this theory. Benjamin Black from Rutgers University and his team set out to crack the code and discovered a hidden paradox. Maybe we were peering through the wrong climate lens. They ran 42 different climate model simulations, varying the magnitude of volcanic emissions, time of year of the eruption, background climate state, and eruption column height to see what climate disruptions the Toba eruption might have caused. There was a significant drop in temperatures in the northern hemisphere in the first year after the event, up to 18 degrees Fahrenheit. The southern hemisphere, where the early humans were settling, didn't go through a rough cooling that could have affected them all. The most significant eruptions that can seriously change the world's climatic patterns come from supervolcanoes like Yellowstone or Mount Toba. Luckily, these erupt very rarely, about every 100,000 years or more. Still, climate scientists study volcanic eruptions to understand and explain short periods of cooling in the history of our planet. Every few decades or so, a volcanic eruption lets out a substantial number of particles and gases. Some of them will block enough sunlight to start a brief global cooling period. Nothing like the real volcanic winter, but still felt across the globe. It's been there for over 3 billion years, but now some of the Earth's oldest crust is falling apart. Today, our continents seem stuck in place, but over a long time, they've moved and shifted around a lot. It's all thanks to tectonic activity, which makes part of Earth's surface slowly slide around like pieces of a giant puzzle. Some of the most stable parts of these puzzle pieces are called cratons. Cratons are super old and strong sections of rock that form the roots of continents and keep them together. The North American craton is one of them. It makes up a big part of the United States, about half of Canada, and most of Greenland. Scientists have singled out about 35 of these big ancient cratons around the world. They mostly stayed in the same place for hundreds of millions of years because of how strong they are. But in 2014, they discovered that cratons might not be as indestructible as they thought. Some cratons had lost parts of their strong roots because of certain geologic processes and became thinner. It looks like cratons could become less stable if they go through more tectonic changes. In 2024, scientists at China University of Geosciences analyzed an ancient landmass called the North China Craton, or NCC for short. They wanted to learn more about how some of Earth's oldest rock regions can break apart. This process of cratons disintegrating is called decratonization. The NCC is so interesting to study because it has three main parts: the Western Bloc, the Eastern Bloc, and the Trans-North China Orogen, a zone that lies between the two blocks. Scientists found that during the Mesozoic era, the Eastern Bloc lost its deep ancient roots because of the strong Earth movements called tectonomagmatic events. So scientists wanted to see exactly how the processes in the mantle and the movements of Earth's plates led to the breaking down of the NCC. They created 4D models showing how the NCC's shape changed over time, including its surface shape, how its layers stretched, and the way earthquake waves moved through it. They found that a section of the tectonic plate slid beneath the craton and then began to roll back. This rolling and stretching made the strong rock thin out and eventually lose stability. All this started around 200 million years ago, back during the Jurassic period, when dinosaurs were rocking the world. The North China Craton isn't the only place where this decratonization process can happen. Other cratons, like those in North America, South America, and China's Yangtze region, may have gone through similar changes. Scientists say this shows how the continents on Earth have slowly changed and evolved over billions of years. And it looks like, when it comes to geology, there's no place that is 100% safe from changes, but it's no cause for alarm. You don't notice this, but our planet never stops moving and is perfectly normal. But sometimes, this movement still brings dramatic changes. In 2017, scientists made an official announcement that Zealandia can be called a new continent. The continental shelves of this mysterious continent are lying at a depth of around 3,280 feet below sea level. The nearest oceanic crust dives even deeper, at 9,800 feet below that. Geologists have gone deep down to collect rocks from the ocean floor. They found that, unlike the nearby oceanic crust, which is made up of fresh basaltic rocks, the crust around New Zealand is a mix of ancient granite, limestone, and sandstone. All this screams continental crust. Plus, scientists have discovered a narrow strip of oceanic crust that separates Australia from the hidden land of Zealandia. It means these two are separate continents. 85 million years ago, Zealandia decided to break free from the supercontinent Gondwana. Millions of years later, the mighty Pacific Plate, the heavyweight champion of tectonic plates, decided to take a dive beneath Zealandia's continental crust. And that's how the root of Zealandia, that connection to its continental crust, broke off and went into the depths below. And that's not all the tectonic news from this part of the world. 120 million years ago, Australia and Antarctica were a single piece of land. They went their separate ways, but Antarctica didn't leave empty-handed. Today, there's an oceanic plateau in the Indian Ocean. Long ago, it was connected to another lost continent, the Kerguelen microcontinent. Scientists believe that it made a land bridge between India and Antarctica. To find out what it was like, we can look at a tiny archipelago in the southern Indian Ocean. These islands are all that is left of the ancient landmass. They have a cold climate and feature glaciers because they're so close to Antarctica. But in the past, the weather here must have been temperate with plenty of rainfall. The animals and plants would have been similar to those that live in tropical regions today. Another lost and found continent isn't hiding in the ocean, but under Europe. It's called Greater Adria, and it collided with Europe and started to sink under it around 100 million years ago. Today it lies beneath Italy, Greece, and the Balkans. Its size and even shape match that of Greenland, the world's largest island. Greater Adria is no longer visible, but it left some clues. Part of it was embedded in the Alps. The other chunks are part of present-day Italy and Croatia, on the other side of the Adriatic Sea. Limestone rocks from the former continent started to change once they were under the European landmass. Great heat and pressure spread over tens of millions of years changed their structure. And that's when the limestone left the chat and the marble took its place. Greater Adria wasn't a solid piece of land like the big continent we see today, but more like a giant shallow shelf underwater. Over time, sand, mud, and other stuff settled on this shelf and slowly turned into rock. Greater Adria might have been a little like Zealandia or the Florida Keys, a chain of small islands sitting in a shallow sea. Above the water, there were probably lots of little islands and archipelagos, and beneath the waves, there were colorful coral reefs filled with marine life. If you lived back then and had a scuba tank, it would have been an amazing place to dive and explore. So, with all the things going on with the Cretans, who knows? We could see a new continent in the future. Plus, studying the Earth's crust even deeper can change history as we know it. Scientists in Copenhagen have made an amazing discovery about the real birthplace of Scandinavia, and it's not where we thought. After studying sand and rock from remote parts of Finland, they found out that Scandinavia's roots actually came from Greenland over 3.75 billion years ago. This means the area where Nordic countries are now is 250 million years older than the scientists had previously believed. And we now know, thanks to the tiny crystals called zircons found in Finnish river sands. When scientists looked closely at their chemical makeup, they realized the age of crystals matched the rocks found in Greenland, not Scandinavia. They used special techniques to analyze elements like uranium, lead, lutetium, and hafnium, and discovered that Scandinavia's rocky base most likely broke off from Greenland billions of years ago. A small seed of land probably started drifting across the Earth's surface over hundreds of millions of years. This piece eventually settled where Finland is today. Over time, new layers of rock formed around this seed and slowly turned into the Scandinavia we see on maps now. The same study could help us rethink how the continents on Earth first formed. The most accepted theory is that the continental crust began growing right when the planet was formed. But new studies show that the signs of continents only started growing a billion years later. The scientists explain that Earth's continents may have begun as tiny seeds of ancient crust in different places. These seeds grew over time, forming the landmasses we know today. These ancient seeds aren't just found in Scandinavia, but also in Australia, South Africa, and India. Scientists aren't sure if all these seeds came from the same place or if they grew separately in different parts of the world. So there's still a lot to learn, and scientists need to keep digging to figure out if all these ancient seeds are related to each other.